Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Trusted Tech Talk podcast. I'm your host, Manny, and I'm joined today by Rob Sandbach, who's the founder and managing director of Indiespring. He's going to be discussing his journey into the tech world and how at such a young age he decided to go out himself to set up the business, which has now been running for over 14 years. Welcome to the podcast, Rob Sandbach. How are you doing today?
Very well, thanks, Manny. Yeah, not bad.
It's good to have you on, Rob. But I know since we've been doing these podcasts with Trusted Tech Talks, we wanted to get you on here for a while. So really excited to have you on here because I think you've got quite an exciting journey and you guys have done some exciting things over the years, and it seems to be more exciting things coming up as well. I think it's good, Rob, when we start these off, for those that don't know you, it'd be good for you to talk through just yourself, what you do, but then also going into your journey into tech and what led you here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, my name's Rob Sandbach. I'm the founder and MD of an agency based in central Manchester called Indiespring. We're 25 people, pushing on to 30 actually now. We do mobile app development primarily for clients in the US and in the UK predominantly. I'm an agency lifer, born in Manchester, educated here, university here, had two proper jobs, one in an agency, one in a software house, and then decided that I wanted to sort of step out on my own and give it a shot. And I think, I don't know what pushed me directly into that decision. I think at the time I was a bit naive into how much work that would be. But I'd managed to do a bit of contracting and moonlighting. I'm not a developer by trade. I taught myself to code, so I'm one of those dangerous developers who think they can do it but actually can't. But yeah, I was contracting at the time and decided to I was given an offer by my client at that point, who were actually still a client, to give me a runway, and I left full-time employment and decided to enter the freelance world. I was 24 at the time, and that's where it started really, and it's been a journey since then. The first employee I hired was my brother. Being a contractor, we didn't have an office, so we worked remotely. He was actually still at university in Hull at the time, so as we got busier, I decided to hire more people, but they were all remote contractors around the world. So at one point, we had a contractor in every state bar Antarctica. Every continent bar Antarctica, which was pretty exciting and a bit crazy for a 25-year-old to be managing. So we did that whole working remotely thing initially. Our model early on was to hire development talent, as contractors at day rates around the world, but to do the testing and quality assurance and project management in-house here in Manchester. And as we started to hire more and more friends and train them up and colleagues and people looking for work, we worked out that actually we could probably cross-train some of those people into development for the more support sort of elements of our work. And so we did, and it was at that point we decided to get the office. We wanted to build a team, a sense of vibrancy, of culture, be more than just Slack certainly wasn't around back then, but a Skype channel and an old fuddled project management board. So we did that. We got an office in Sale. We got the guys together. I think there were 4 of us based here then, and that was the start of it really. But from that point onwards, even then, it was what's now called hybrid working. 8-9 years ago, we just said, look, we'd like to get together Tuesdays and Thursdays in the office, but the rest of the time, feel free to work when and where you want. And we've just gone from there, Manny. We've had some very fortunate clients, or we've been very fortunate to have such good clients, and we generally hold on to them. A lot of our work is long-term partnership-led stuff, so we don't tend to do the one-and-done type projects. We generally are embedded within our clients' teams and viewed as as part of that team as opposed to an external supplier. So that's given us great strength, particularly through the last few years, which have been challenging for so many people. And yes, the rest of it's just history. I moved into town, and bigger offices, more people, more enjoyment, larger clients, and just working our way up that ladder, really.
It's quite could be seen as quite a daunting or massive leap to set up yourself at such a young age. I know nowadays you've got entrepreneurs that are teenagers in the bedroom, but back then to give up that corporate world to set up something, there must have been a gap, or I don't know. There might not have been, but was there something that you saw there as a gap in that agency, in that sort of digital agency world, where you were thinking, do you know what? I think I could do that, and if I had the right people around me, I could fill that gap, because it must have been the demand was obviously there. But it's just really interesting to know what you thought that you and what has obviously become Indiespring and a really good successful business. Just that you saw, do you know what? Yeah, I can do this myself, or do this on my own.
It's a great question, and it gets back to our purpose, really. For me, the opportunity was to change the way I worked, to get out of working for someone else 9 to 5, to work how, when, and where I wanted. I think I'd be lying as well if I didn't mention that contractor rates were significantly higher than salaried employees. But yeah, the driver for me was that lifestyle change, and it really came when I travelled. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to travel the world a bit for a few months with my then girlfriend, now wife, and just being exposed to being on the road and realizing that I could continue to freelance and moonlight whilst doing that really opened my eyes. And I think I got back to full-time employment and thought, I don't need to do this, and if I can earn a fair daily rate and take that opportunity, I should. It wasn't for me a big idea. We're not a product company where we've seen a gap in a market and we're going after it with a product and a solution, although we've tried that a couple of times. For me, it was a lifestyle change, and I think that's why from the beginning that's been mirrored throughout the organization. It's that opportunity to allow initially my brother, then my friends, and then obviously the circle's now much wider. Give the opportunity to our staff to work in a different way. Of course, now, after the pandemic, the world's eyes have been open to it, and we certainly weren't the first, but I think we were early. It's that was the why, and our purpose is to enrich the lives of our employees. The work that we do is important, and we aim to do a good job, of course, but the why really is our staff and our team. And yeah, it came from that. It came from that rather than an insightful observation as to a market gap. It was initially a selfish desire to work in a new way.
How is that, just not working a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, working out? Because I could imagine you actually probably do more hours now and more days.
Yeah, but it's on your own terms, isn't it? I think that's the difference, and we certainly don't expect that of our employees. So. It's the freedom to choose. I think that's what's important. And primarily, originally you either worked for someone who told you when and where to work, or you had to take on all the risk of being your own boss. And then of course you can do what you want, but as you've just alluded to, especially in the early days, it's not an easy lifestyle. I think nowadays you can take on the salary job and get the security around that, but also enjoy some of the benefits of flexibility that come from having an employer that's not breathing down your neck with rigid requirements as to how and when you work. And I think that's the opportunity the world's opening up to now. We were just lucky that we stumbled upon it, as I say, 10 years ago or so.
Well, I think though, Rob, obviously, I think the first time we spoke was maybe about 4.5, 5 years ago, and I remember at the time when you were talking about, it's flexible, people can work remote. Back then, those types of businesses in Manchester were few and far between. But I think because that's been in your core from day one, like there are businesses out there that are offering this now, but it's a huge culture shift. And I actually saw a business yesterday that have now, first of all, we're saying unlimited holidays. I know that's a talk within itself, because it's proven they don't take they take less holidays, but they've changed it. They've changed it now. They've said now we're scrapping it now. We're not doing limited holidays anymore. And I think that's always the risk with some of these businesses that were 5 days in the office and then saying, yeah, we're now flexible, we're remote first. Like the tap could be turned off at any point. And I think because you've had that ethos from day one, people know what they're joining isn't a new thing, and it's going to take some adjustment. It's probably the reason why you've managed to be successful. I managed to come through the other side, especially the tough time that we've had during COVID as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do think it's easier to start that way than it is to transition for the reasons you've alluded to. And you know, the fundamental principle for me of flexible working is you have to trust your employees. If you find you're trying to install surveillance software, or you're worried they're going to be less productive, or you're on a losing battle, so you have to hire people you trust, and you have to hire people who who are capable of being self-directed, not being micromanaged, given a task and gets on with it, supported, sure, but not directed every day, because that's very, very difficult in a remote environment. So yeah, we were blessed because we were doing that from the beginning. So everyone we've hired has been hired, against those criteria. I imagine it's more difficult if you're a business that didn't hire against those criteria and we're hiring people who need sort of more hands-on management. Yeah, it's a hell of a transition to have to get your head around. But yeah, again, fortunate, very fortunate.
Oh, definitely, Rob. One of the things that resonates for me, and you mentioned it earlier on in this talk, is those original partners that you started with. A lot of them are still working with you now. And how many years on is that now?
Our oldest client's been with us from the beginning, so sort of 10 years.
And 10 years. Yeah. I'm just that's for me to have that trusted partner for 10 years. Why do you think it is that they started with you 10 years ago and you're still their first port of call right now? And because that's rare that a business would stay with somebody for 10 years with how competitive that industry is.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have that many clients. We might have 8 to 10, but the average tenure for them will probably be over 5 years at this point, I would imagine. So as to why, I mean, you'd have to ask them. I'd like to think that our transparency is a big part of that. One of our core values is transparency. I have a theory that as long as you're transparent with people, you can only ever make an honest mistake. It's when you start trying to cover things up or bluff or pretend that relationships really start to go sour. So I think that helps. I think, on a more pragmatic sense, I'm an engineer by trade. We tend to gravitate towards engineering, code, integration-led projects that tend to be more substantial and long-lasting in nature. Transformation's the buzzword now, but they're not generally marketing campaign-led with a shelf life. So I think when I look across our client base, we're on the operations side of things as opposed to the marketing and sales side of things, which I do think helps as well. The other side of it is, being independently owned without any investment. I think we have the opportunity to scale at our own pace. We've grown. I think our average growth rate is about 25-26% year on year, and depending who you ask, that's either incredibly slow or incredibly fast. And that's just the tech world that we live in, isn't it? If you're investment backed and you need to accelerate, you don't have the luxury as we had of taking a year of pausing and saying we're not taking on new work. We need to just sort our processes out. And in my experience, every 3 years or so in our world, you need a year where you just rethink, restructure, and just catch yourselves up a little bit. So that's probably helped too, not having that driving imperative for growth, and which means you start to cut corners and start to not take the time you sometimes need. The last piece I'd say is relationships. I'm very big on face to face. For all we're a hybrid organisation, I'm very big on face to face relationships. We keep all of our development team here in the UK. We visit all of our clients regularly, even the ones in America, and I think that adds another layer of trust to the partnership that helps you get through the tougher times.
One of the things, Rob, that is interesting, obviously, from where it started to where it's gone, and I know there's the clientele's changed as well. You've kept those core clients, but the variety of work that the team's doing is quite exciting, and it's sort of two opposites as well, really, from Vegas to stuff that you're doing in the UK with some really good sort of third sector, public sector, charity type businesses. It'd be good if you just talk through that journey for Indiespring and sort of what
absolutely.
How you guys have transitioned to support such varied clients, but then also a little bit into, I don't know if you can talk about it, but what that pipeline and what sort of the future looks like for you guys as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, being an agency, our history and story in that regard is similar to most others. We would originally do anything we could for anyone. Original clients were, maybe the barber or a restaurant and websites like that. And then over time, as happens, you gain experience, you gain a bit of cash in the bank, you gain the ability to say no, you learn what you're good at, you learn what you enjoy, and those things all start to, self-propel, and you have case studies and that support more work in that sector and so on. Where we've focused really is on our technology and our, what we do. We haven't focused yet on who we do that for. The advice is to try and define a discipline for market. We're honing in on discipline. We're mobile first. We've been doing, apps since the iPhone, the App Store launched, but we haven't yet focused on a sector. I think as we grow, that might be our next step. But really, we've been climbing that I guess you'd call it brand ladder from people that few people have ever heard of, to people that most people in Manchester may have heard of, to now starting to work with some larger organisations, as you just mentioned. So the big clients that we won over the COVID period were the British Heart Foundation, where we've done some work around improving access to defibrillators, as well as more than car insurance and some work within telematics there to help improve driver safety and reduce insurance premiums as a result of that. So, just knocking on the door now of what we might think of as high street names or brands that you might expect people to be aware of, which is really exciting for us because, for the first 8 years, we weren't working on those projects. And of course, we value all of them, but it is nice to work on projects that people have heard of, and you get that, that little spark of interest as you mention these names, and it helps you get to the next step. And I can't speak too much at the moment to what's coming down the pipeline, but it's more in that vein. That said, we still work with a lot of startups and a lot of excitement and energy and enthusiastic entrepreneurs and people who've gained investment and are looking to develop products and want to get a head start on that. There's some great stuff happening there. We're working with a wonderful professional networking solution called NetHub. They're our most recent client win, and encourage people to have a look at that. So it's still a mix. As I say, mostly mobile focused, but across a variety of sectors and business sizes.
No, it's when you say those household names, it's great when because I've been recruited for sort of 17 years now, which makes me quite a bit of a dinosaur. But when I've supported clients or helped them to put teams in place for them, that's helped with the development, and then I see an advert on TV or I see something kind of on a billboard, it's sort of that you get that satisfaction and thinking, God, I was part of that journey. I helped them to achieve that, and it sounds like that's what you guys are use it as an organisation are getting now, those household names that everybody's heard of.
Yeah. I mean, touch wood. We've got a couple. Of the objective is to work up to more, but it's always a journey, isn't it? Selling to those organisations is different to selling to your friends and family initially, and then network contacts and so on. So it's exciting for me. we're hoping to get to 40, 50 people in the next couple of years, and that's a degree of change which is great. My role clearly has changed from the days when I was doing the coding and my brother was doing the quality assurance. But yeah, it's fantastic. And you're right, that the glow of being involved with some of these more prestige projects, it is great. It's a nice bonus on those jobs.
Next question I've got for you, Rob, is at the moment, and I think you've touched on it a bit there about you guys are looking at getting to sort of 40 to 50 people over the next few years. What's the tech scene in the UK is absolutely booming. The Manchester tech scene, again, you see investment, the amount of investment that's coming into the city, even the infrastructure for the skyscrapers that are coming in for people to come here, even though we're meant to be, everyone's going remote first. But being in the thick of that Manchester tech scene and setting that business up 10 years ago, you've obviously seen a lot of changes. But for yourself, what do you just see as the most exciting part of being in the thick of that tech scene, which is Manchester right now?
I think, I'm recording this podcast in London at the moment, and clearly at a different stage of their tech scene journey, but just the vibrancy and the energy that comes from getting like-minded people with different ideas, exciting, innovative approaches to new problems. I think there's more than a network effect. It's a catalytic thing that you can walk into a co-working space and just feel it in the air. You can overhear a conversation in a coffee shop and get excited just by eavesdropping. Yeah. And I think Manchester's always had that entrepreneurial that slant to it, definitely. But I do think these things propel one another. And yeah, if as Manchester grows, as we get more people in the room and different views and differing viewpoints and different ideas, I'm really excited. I think it could be huge for us, and it's happening. The Manchester Digital are doing great work, tech festivals, the Digital City festivals, and so on. We're getting there, but I'm really excited to be part of what I think is going to be absolutely huge change over the next 10 years or so as we shift from another city in Manchester that's large enough to have a decent tech scene to really accelerate as a vibrant hub within the UK and wider world.
No, it is a very exciting time, and I didn't know. Obviously, when COVID hit, there was a bit of a speed bump, only a tiny one, but then it just went right. Well, actually, everything's okay, and it's just kept on going. And yeah. I think when people are talking about right now, it's competitive for whether you're finding for work, and there's so much work about at the moment, and there's so many options for people. It's just, we've got to get used to this as potentially just being the norm now, because if it doesn't slow down, we've just got to adapt and think, right, this is the Manchester market now. There's going to be more and more people coming in there. We've just got to keep true to our culture, our beliefs, and how we treat our staff, and then people automatically get attracted to them as well, those types of businesses. We're coming towards an end here, Rob, which I feel like we could keep talking for a long time. But what the question I always like to ask on these is, if you were right now starting your tech journey, what advice would you give yourself if you were starting all over again right now? What would you give a young Rob Sandbach advice on?
I wish I had a super sexy answer. For me, if you're an entrepreneur that isn't investment backed, that especially as a service-based agency, each hire was really difficult, and you had to really justify it, and you had to be sure you'd get that back. My advice to my prior self would be, do that faster. Get invested in people who you trust and know, and take that risk a little bit sooner than I did. And I think that would have accelerated my growth a lot sooner. That would be the advice. Just take that little bit more risk and invest in having a decent team around you. And I think that's really where all those relationships, all that work, all that transparency is worth nothing if you haven't got the right people in the right seat.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Trusted Tech Talk podcast with me, Manny, and my guest speaker, Rob Sandbach, founder and MD at Indiespring. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and Spotify, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss another episode. If you want to discuss this topic further, have any follow-up questions, or would like to be a guest on a Trusted Tech Talks podcast, then get in touch with me via email or on LinkedIn.